Hello, everyone. I am back. Yes, finally, I am back. In a long time. I did a really weird episode in a hotel room in Minneapolis, and I couldn't do a show for the game after that. Not like I really needed to or anything. But we are back in typical audio format. This is the Blues Rants podcast. I am your host, Philip Miller. We are streaming to you live from Twitter and from YouTube. BluesRants.com for anybody that's interested. Thank you all for tuning in. We got a lot to discuss today. We have a trade. We have 2 losses against the Nashville Predators. That's fun. We have a game against the Devils tonight. We've got a great article on goaltenders. All kinds of fun stuff for St. Louis Blues fans. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic, but let's just jump into it right away. Before we get to the trade talks for Marco Scandella, we will get into the 4-3 loss against the Predators, followed by the 2-1 loss over the Predators. I said before the game started last weekend, the first game against Nashville at home, that these were 2 where you really needed to try and take 3 out of 4, if not 4 out of 4, to try and get things back on track. Obviously, the Blues did neither of that. They went 0-2. I believe that's a straight-up 0-3-1 season sweep now by the Predators for this season. But Predators take both. Predators take both in regulation. Predators take both by 1 goal. The Blues are now 2-7-3 in their last 12. They have allowed 3 goals in all but the most recent one. Guys, this is getting to be a problem. And what better time to try and reset things than with the New Jersey Devils tonight? If you don't dummy up this team and put up a 4, a 5, a 6 spot, whatever, this team's in trouble. This team's in real trouble. We have gone from Stanley Cup contention for the first half of the season to, who knows, another first-round exit? I don't know. I need a temperature. I need a pulse on people here. Like, what is the panic index now? Seriously, what is it? Because, and I will say that I liked the Blues game on Sunday. Saturday, jury's kind of out on that one. Sunday, I liked the game because I watched the replay. I'm looking at people on Twitter. Sunday's game was a Blues game. It was the Blues style of play for the entire time. Now, of course, there's that whole word called finish, and there's that whole word called execution, and there's that whole we got some good looks, but at the end of the day, that finish for the Blues was just not there. And again, yes, they allowed 2 goals. One being a very late power play goal in the 3rd period, which I'm pretty sure is exactly the same way the Predators game the day before ended, at home. I'm not sure how people concerned are, but I'm getting real concerned. I've been trying to hold it off and hold it off and hold it off and say we'll be fine and say we'll get out of it. This is now winless in your last 5, 2 wins in your last 12. You're technically in first in the conference and in the division, although the Stars are now tied with points and the Avalanche are 1 behind you with a game in hand. You have the worst last 10 record of anybody who isn't named the Detroit Red Wings. The Tampa Bay Lightning just won 11 in a row. They sound like the St. Louis Blues all of a sudden. They've had 2 10-plus winning streaks this season alone. And just like that, all of a sudden, they're 1 point behind the Boston Bruins, who have just been on fire the entirety of the season. We've lauded and praised the Blues for this bounce-back mentality for the entire calendar year, and now it's slipping. And I have to ask you guys, what is the next goalpost? I'm serious. What is the next goalpost for this team? Is it the goaltending, which we'll talk about in a minute? Is it the defense? Well, let's see what happened after today. Is it the offense? Yeah, we don't have scoring, as indicated by the one goal by Tyler Bozak on Sunday. I'm starting to really question what it is flawed about the team for this game, or for the next game, or for the last game, or for the last 3 games. What did I say at the beginning of February? This was the proving grounds for the Blues for this month. You started off February with a 5-2 loss. Then you put up 6 against the Hurricanes. Great. You also allowed 2 goals in the third period that didn't need to go in. I'm pretty sure it was 6-1 at one point. Then you lose again to the Jets. Then you lose to OT and the Stars. Goal that Jordan Binnington probably shouldn't have allowed. Then you have the Ducks, which, yes, that was a freak accident, and we'll talk about Jay Bouwmeester as we talk about the Marco Scandella trade. And by the way, I believe that game has been rescheduled for March 11th. The San Jose game getting pushed back to March 13th, if anyone has not heard that news yet. St. Louis Blues will play the Ducks in Anaheim March 11th at 9 p.m. The San Jose game gets moved to March 13th, which they will play at home at 7, all Central Time. But that game got off to an okay start, and then obviously, you kind of have to throw it out the window. Then you lose to the Knights in OT. Very similar to the choking fashion that they did the last game that they lost in OT, where they gave up like 3 goals in the third period. This time they only gave up 2 goals in the third period, but you still gave up the game winner. Then you lose 2 games back-to-back in regulation to the Central Division Predators, who are now all of a sudden with 65 points, as are the Jets, as are almost the Coyotes. There's a lot of parity in the wild card teams, sure, but the Nashville Predators' goal differential is 2. Pecorine has not been himself. Okay, great, save for 1 game. I'm starting to wonder what the goalpost is here. How much farther can we keep kicking these things out? Because it's getting a little bit sickening of continuing to lose. We are now winless in 5 straight. And if you can't beat the New Jersey Devils tonight, who just shipped off their captain Andy Green, who just shipped off Blake Coleman to the Tampa Bay Lightning, I don't have an answer for you anymore. Aside from, maybe you have to finally give up the top prospect and the first round pick for a guy that can actually score. Because it seems like right now, other than Zach Sanford, a lot of our guys are having trouble doing said thing. And I will give credit where it is due. They looked good against the Nashville Predators from the highlights that I could see, from the things that I was reading about them. They looked better. But again, 2-1 regulation loss. 0 points. 0. You are tied in points and games with the Stars. You're a game behind on the Avalanche, but a point ahead. It was 1 month ago, less than that. A month ago where we had, I think it was a 10-point lead on anybody in the Western Conference. The Oilers and the Knights are 4 points away from you. It's only going to get tougher, fellas. I've been saying that, and I've been beating it like a dead horse, but at what point is this team going to start stepping up and trying to get back in the win column again? You got the Minnesota Wild, the Chicago Blackhawks, the New York Islanders, who have been slipping a little bit. You've got the Rangers on March 3rd. You've got the Devils on March 6th. You've got the Hawks again on March 8th. Every single one of those should be wins. I want it right now. I'm going to be selfish. Every single one of those should be wins. I'll even throw the Coyotes up there. The Coyotes play on Thursday in St. Louis, but knowing the Blues' track record against the Coyotes, no matter where they are in the standings, I'm not holding my breath on that one. And that's the worst part. I can't call any games a win now with the way the St. Louis Blues have been playing. And it's starting to tick me off a little, if you can't tell by the inflection in my voice. So that being said, tonight against the New Jersey Devils, if you don't win, I don't know what the problem is. If you allow 3+ goals, if the guys can't go in and basically score a touchdown on this disappointing team in New Jersey, I don't have the answers for you. Sean Tierney of The Athletic might, though. Posted a great article that I've only gotten a chance to skim through, but I will reread at some point. Looking at the performance of goaltending, Jordan Binnington and Jake Allen. Obviously, Jordan Binnington's been rough. Basically since a little bit before the All-Star break. Jake Allen, well, Jake Allen hasn't been iced all that much. He was iced for that game against Nashville, but didn't get the win. Their expected goal share has now dipped below 50, which if you look back at one point in mid to late December, they were almost at .60. That's probably the best they've looked all season. Their expected goals for has dipped way down to 1.7. At one point, they were a 2.4. You keep going on here. Expected goals against rate over time dip below the average. Again at a 1.8, 1.7. Performance versus workload over time. Jordan Binnington has gone directly over from good results to poor results. Not so much in the hard versus easy work, but directly to poor results. Jake Allen looks like he's gotten relatively easy work for good results, but it's starting to trend back a little bit. And again, Jake Allen not gotten a whole lot of ice time in the past month, 2 months, month and a half. Now, Jordan Binnington has a slightly above average workload this year, just over 2.7 expected goals against. But the performance has now dropped to one of the worst starting goaltenders in league. The Blues allow fewer quality chances in front of their backup, and Allen has rewarded the team with better than expected results in those situations. For Jordan Binnington, his good results early in the year, when his teammates were struggling to limit chances in front of him, have waned as the season has gone on. Binnington's rate of saving goals relative to expectation has also trended downward. He remained above expectation until mid-December and has dipped dramatically low. I mean, it looks like Mount Everest on my screen right now. And I feel like this is almost an unfair amount of blame putting on Jordan Binnington, but have we put blame on Jordan Binnington yet? He hasn't been good. Yes, a lot of it has its limitations, but he has not been good. And I'm sorry, we didn't win the Stanley Cup last year with Jake Allen. We won it with Binnington. I love Jake Allen. I know most of St. Louis doesn't. I love Jordan Binnington. I know most of St. Louis does. But he's got to be better. The honeymoon phase of 2019 is officially over. I've liked his game the last few, but it's not been enough, especially in the critical moments, as I've talked about again and again and again and again and again till I'm blue in the face. His critical moments have not been there. they got to start getting there if this team wants to win more. And I won't take away from the defense in front of him either, which is a perfect segue into the trade. For those of you that are not aware, just over 3 hours ago, the St. Louis Blues and Montreal Canadiens made a trade. They acquired defenseman Marco Scandella in a trade with the Canadiens. In exchange, I could not think of the word exchange. My goodness, my brain is blanking right now. I'm all sorts of behind. I was trying to get the article out on bluesrants.com, which you can go and read for the instant analysis of this trade that I'm about to talk about, or you can just keep listening. But that being said, I did that right after work, and I'm furiously trying to type and get it out, and I'm just continuing to eyeball the clock, and I ran a little bit behind. So I apologize for that. But all that being said, the St. Louis Blues acquire Marco Scandella in exchange for the 2020 second-round pick and a 2021 conditional fourth-round pick, which Montreal only receives if St. Louis either A, re-signs Marco Scandella before next season, basically, or B, if St. Louis wins 2 playoff rounds and he plays in at least 50% of those games. The other stipulation on Montreal's behalf is they retain $2 million of his 50% salary. Montreal, for all intents and purposes, even if you have a team that I don't think is making the playoffs this year, despite the fact they probably have an organization that thinks otherwise, thank your lucky stars for Marc Bergevin. And if anybody actually listening thinks this is even remotely a win for the St. Louis Blues, get off right now. Because this is an absolute fleecing for St. Louis. They lost this trade. They lost this trade. Get any other ideas out of your head. I'll go over what I like about Marco Scandella, but make an advisement right now. They lost this trade. Look over at the trade for Brendan Dillon. That happened about 2.5 seconds just after they acquired Scandella. Brendan Dillon goes to the Washington Capitals. San Jose retained half of his salary, so now he's over there for $1.635 in Washington. That's, if I'm doing math here, less than Marco Scandella. The Sharks got a 2020 second and a 2021 conditional third. Now, the third is either in 2021 or in 2020, basically if the Capitals win the Cup, which is it's a hell of a prerequisite to actually upgrade that pick, who knows? Capitals are very, very good. I would hold them in high regard in terms of winning the Cup. I think it's very, very possible. But if you look at some of Brendan Dillon's numbers, especially advanced numbers, he is far and away better. He is the reason we've been talking about him and not Marco Scandella at the trade deadline. And by the way, guys, before I even get into the deeper details of why this was a win for Montreal, Montreal just acquired him from Buffalo this January for a 4th-round pick. There's a conditional 4th-round pick in this trade with St. Louis and the 2020 second. That alone just says wizardry on behalf of Marc Bergevin and the Montreal Canadiens. That is a steal and a half at minimum. Obviously, I'm not happy with the trade. That goes without saying. It was way too much of an overpay. I like the fact that it ended up being a $2 million salary retention. One of the reasons I am okay with the trade. But some of the pros that I do like about Marco Scandella, to try and bring some positivity into this mostly negative episode. The thing I like about Marco Scandella, he's going to be your penalty kill guy. The Blues penalty kill has been dismal in this, 10-12 game hump, skid, stretch, slump, whatever you want to call it. he's had pretty decent numbers on the penalty kill. I think in his 97 minutes, he's blocked something like 10 shots and landed 8 hits. I know those aren't the greatest stats to measure a penalty killer by, but they're still good. They're around Colton Parayko's numbers, and he's on the penalty kill significantly less than Brendan Dillon is. That's about the one aspect I will give him. He's strong on the penalty kill. That's what the Blues are really needing right now, as it's really slipped away in the past 12 games here. I also like Marco Scandella because he's going to have to replace Jay Bouwmeester. Jay Bouwmeester, again, in a freak accident, a horrible accident, which, by the way, he is in St. Louis and recovering, which is great news. But with that ICD in his chest now, his return not only to the Blues for this season, but to the league is not optimistic. And it's really unfortunate to see such a great veteran guy possibly end his career like that, but I think that's what it's going to end up becoming. Obviously, you know, my old man's a doctor, and I asked him, hey, if I got an ICD put in me at age 35, do you recommend I still play ice hockey at the most professional level? And he went, I wouldn't play baseball at the most professional level if you had an ICD put in your chest at 35. So I'm not super optimistic about Jay Bouwmeester's outcome. That being said, obviously now there is a need to fill in that guy who's been one of, if not the shutdown player for the Blues defense for the last, season and a half. I think Marco Scandella can fit in well, at least in the bottom pairings. Again, I believe he was probably a number 5 or a number 6 within Montreal's organization. Did not see a whole lot of minutes. I think he only played, 10 games. If he was with the club on January 4th from February 18th, that can't be a whole lot. But I'm hoping to see that maybe he gets more ice time than, Michael Del Zotto did last season. I think his number is 28, so we'll see what his number is, because obviously Mackenzie McEachern has that number right now. But for a guy like Marco Scandella, again, I'd like to see him on the penalty kill. He's got pretty decent Corsi numbers, above positive Corsi numbers, and he is actually pretty good with his zone entries, which is another thing I would like to see out of Scandella. Obviously the best way to get your offense started in any situation is actually carrying the puck in. I never can remember the number, but it's something like you have a 65% higher chance of getting either a goal or a decent scoring chance by carrying the puck in rather than a chip and chase, a dump in and follow up, what have you. So I like that aspect to Marco Scandella's game. The other aspect I like to Marco Scandella's game, the physicality. He's a physical player. He's not going to shy away from a heavy forecheck, and that's exactly the way the Blues play. Was that at the end of the day, however, what made Doug Armstrong make this move over Brendan Dillon? That's still the question mark I have, because Marco Scandella, his contract is $2 million for the Blues. That's more than Brendan Dillon's 50% retainment is over in Washington now. We trade him for a conditional 4th and a 2nd. They trade Brendan Dillon for a conditional 3rd and a 2nd. Please tell me what it is that what is it that either deterred San Jose from making the trade or deterred St. Louis from going through with the trade? Because it goes without, everybody is in agreement that Brendan Dillon is still a better defenseman than Marco Scandella. So my question is, some of you might be ahead of me, what is it that puts Scandella over the top or requires the same asking price as Marco Scandella? Why are we trading a 2nd round and a 4th round for a guy that was just traded for a 4th round less than a month ago. More than a month ago, excuse me. I'm really trying to find the logic in paying that much for a guy that is clearly inferior to this other hot commodity that was being pursued by multiple teams. I mean, did Armstrong throw out did Armstrong throw out the same offer to San Jose and Brendan Dillon's agent or whoever, and they said no? I'm failing to see the logic in there, because it's virtually the exact same thing as Washington. Does Brendan Dillon prefer to play on a team like Washington? I don't buy that either, because did you see how emotional he got in his interview with reporters before what was ultimately his last game in San Jose? He loved being a Shark, man. I'm really trying to find the logic in here. I hope somebody is in agreement with me on that. Like, how can you pay just as much, if not more, for a guy in Marco Scandella over a guy like Brendan Dillon? Because it was reported, I think at least by Pierre LeBrun, if not Bob McKenzie, of both of TSN, that the Blues were in the mix for acquiring Brendan Dillon, among a couple other teams. I'm telling you, man, I'm trying to see the little logic in there. I'm not seeing a lot. But to try and make a trying to make a rainbow out of a storm cloud, I like his penalty kill ability. I like the physicality. I think that's going to gel very well with the team's identity, at least on the bottom defensive pairings. Don't expect him to be up there, in top minutes with Alex Pietrangelo, maybe in top penalty kill minutes. But the physicality, the penalty kill skill, I like that aspect about him. I like the neutral zone carries. I like the zone entries. But other than that, it goes without question, this is a win for the Habs. This is definitely a win for the Habs. Does it say that they're in full sell mode? I don't think so, but guys like Tomas Tatar, Ilya Kovalchuk, they're definitely not out of the rumor mill yet. For sure, they're not out of the rumor mill yet. Does this mean the Blues are done? I'm inclined to say yes. And it's a small sample size, solely because of the 2 games against Nashville. They played well. Again, they couldn't finish. And they didn't have a lot of goals. But I still liked the St. Louis Blues game in definitely the second half of that back-to-back, if not both halves of the back-to-back. I think they just need to figure out and find that finish in their game and actually score some flipping goals, which is the only reason why I would say yes. Because then you still have your first-round pick. You still have a guy like Sanford who's been on fire. You still have a guy like Jordan Kyrou who has a lot of promise and is an NHL player, if not now, within next season. Do you still try and make a move for a guy like Chris Kreider? I don't think the Blues are too much in the running for that anymore. I think the Avs are projected to be the front runners. Tyler Toffoli is gone. Tyler Toffoli has been traded to the Canucks. That happened yesterday? Yeah, that happened yesterday. Alex Galchenyuk is in Minnesota, though I didn't want him to begin with, especially after watching him on Saturday. There's still Mike Hoffman talks. Apparently there's even, who else did I just hear about from Florida? I'm blanking on his name now. Such a good score. Gosh, I should be on point with this. My apologies. Not Noel Achari, but Trocheck. I believe Vinny Trocheck. He's still in stories. So, I mean, you've got Kovalchuk, you've got Trocheck, you've got Hoffman, which LeBrun has also even said he doesn't believe they're shopping. Mike Hoffman, which still kind of up in the air. Chris Kreider, who the New York Rangers might still sign. That's another one that's still up in the air, but we'll never know until it actually happens. But you've got less than 1 week. You've got basically 5-6 days. And again, I think the next 2 games are going to be a big measuring stick for what happens next. If you can't dummy the Devils, if you can't stop 3 from going in against the Coyotes, if you can't get a big win the very next day against the Stars, I think that's finally going to force Armstrong's hand to lay down the big guns and get that top 6 that we've been talking about since the All-Star break. So, that's all I'll say about that. Once again, this is a clear-cut win for Montreal, this trade. But the Blues are in win-now mode. I hope a guy like Scandella can aid that much more than a guy, like Del Zotto did last year. I don't think Del Zotto played 1 playoff game. Definitely not in the Stanley Cup final. But I hope that Scandella can bring more to the table than a guy like Michael Del Zotto. But we'll just have to see. And I don't think Scandella is playing tonight. He'll probably play, maybe he'll play in Thursday or Friday's game. We'll see. Speaking of lineups, Ryan O'Reilly is going to be centering Jaden Schwartz and Braden Shen. Of course, we all know about the history between Braden Shen and his mood towards playing center or not playing center. You've got Sanford and Thomas and Perron. Man, oh man, who would have seen that? Who would have seen Zach Sanford with Thomas at center and David Perron on wing? That's a weird one. Alex Steen, Tyler Bozak, Jordan Kyrou on third line. Sammy Blais, Oscar Sundqvist, Ivan Barbashev on the fourth line. On defense, you have Carl Gunnarsson and Alex Pietrangelo. You have Justin Falk and Colton Parayko. And you have Vince Dunn and Robert Bortuzzo with Jordan Binnington in net. I will also say, I think it might be a little unfair that he's getting this many starts, Jordan Binnington. But maybe he or maybe Chief, Coach Berube, thinks that's the best way for him to get back into his mindset. And I will agree with this one because if you're allowing goals on this New Jersey Devils team, you definitely have a problem. Especially now that they are captainless and Blake Colemanless. Like I mentioned prior, the Tampa Bay Lightning have won 11 in a row. 11 games in a row. They are by far the hottest team in the league right now. They're going to be the hottest team going into the playoffs. And I say that with just a slight asterisk because I don't know how ready I am to say that this team is Stanley Cup potential because of just how the playoffs went last season. Obviously, they got swept. So, again, they have been lights out ever since December, early January. Much, kind of similar to the Blues situation. Only I think they've been better. I think they've been a gargantuan. And getting a guy like Blake Coleman's only going to help that. But now, the parity for the good teams and the parity for the wild card teams only continues to increase now. Because now you've got the Bruins and Lightning that are up there. You've got the Leafs, Panthers, Blue Jackets. Shout out to the Blue Jackets, by the way, who are still doing kind of well, even without Seth Jones. You've got the Flyers that are still in there. Obviously, the whole story in the Pacific Division is the Coyotes, Flames, Canucks, Golden Knights, and Oilers are still just 2 points away from each other for the Pacific Division lead. 5 teams for the lead. That's ridiculous. You've got the Predators that are still not out of it. You've got the Avalanche, Blues, and Stars now that are all neck and neck. And unless the Blues get their act together, probably will be until the end of the season. It's, like I said, we're heading down the stretch and we're getting into desperate hockey. And so far, the only team I haven't seen really do that that's within playoff contention is St. Louis. So now's the time. Now's the time, or we got serious problems. And I'm talking your typical first round St. Louis Blues exit problems. I want to end with baseball. And I know we're probably already sick and tired of hearing this story, but the Houston Astros, I can't say it without laughing. The Houston Astros only continue to just make my day. So the last time I talked to you guys, I didn't get around to talking about their media day or their kind of opening of spring training from last week, but it was a fun one. Either from the totally ham-handed apologies from all the Astros players to the owner basically contradicting himself in like 2 sentences. I don't know if any of you said that. I'll try to see if I can quietly pull up the audio for that. But this is getting to be ridiculous. Oh, and also the biggest story has been the backlash on Manfred, the the MLB commissioner. Again, the fact that we're still not punishing the players. It's really surprising to me. And I think I finally found like a decent metaphor. Like imagine if, so you have the steroid era. And yes, individual players got punished, as they should have, for cheating. Now imagine you have an entire medical staff from MLB organization come up to the players and say, hey, we got a way to get you guys roided up, but you'll still pass the urine tests and you won't get caught. That seems like what this equivalent of this is. But the fact that you would have players say, okay, yeah, let's do it, then go win a World Series because of it, I'm still just baffled we're not punishing any of these individual players. And hot take for the day, if I haven't already laid out a couple, if I were the MLB, I would just say, you know what, the Astros can't play for the next season. It won't happen, but that's what I would do. Just say, nope, Houston Astros, you're banned from playing in the MLB for this season. Because I think the best takeaway is, surprisingly, one I heard on ESPN. I think the best takeaway is the one that Scott Van Pelt said in his little rant about the Astros. Is that what is the takeaway of this cheating and the Astros not getting stripped of their title or whatever you want to call it? What's the takeaway of all of this? That it was worth it. And it's sad. It's sad to see how many kids are still diehard fans of the Houston Astros because either they don't realize or they're still playing. Or that the fact that they actually do still have a World Series. Their first in their franchise history. Because they cheated. And yes, we're forever going to label guys like Jose Altuve, who's still going on about the buzzer situation. That was another little side story I'll talk about in a second. But to see all these kids still looking up to these guys like they're their idols, again, it all just justifies it in the end. The lack of punishment that we've seen from the MLB is just all justification that it was worth it. Because what was the MLB's punishment? They banned the general manager and the regular manager for a year. Whoop-de-doo. A year. They got to come back were it not for the brazen owner, Jim Crane, saying, no, I want to can them. That was the only good move he did. And then you've got the absolute circus of a media day in spring training. Then they got $5 million. Great. Slap on the wrist. How many, lower end starters or maybe a higher end relievers does that contract translate to? Like, that's pocket change for the MLB, for any franchise. I don't care who. I don't care if it's the Yankees. I don't care if it's the Athletics. And then you lose the first and second round picks for the next 2 years, which in my opinion's really the only thing that comes even remotely close. It's a tragedy, and it's a complete joke, and it's now setting the MLB on fire. People are calling for Rob Manfred to either take away the title. We're literally about to bully him away into we're about to bully Rob Manfred into taking the title away the way we just bullied an entire film studio to remake the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. That's the point that we're at. And this is the MLB. It's gotten to be pretty stupid. And I love talking about it because every day I look, it's just not getting better. Imagine if you're the Astros. You're the Astros. You just got exposed for cheating and winning the World Series trophy, or to Rob Manfred, a piece of metal. And now you've got 2 months, give or take, a little bit more, until you actually have to face the media and you have to have this big press conference, and you're just going to have to suck it in and do it. And what happened? What happened after 2 months of preparation? Remember that Brian Regan bit where he talks about having a cup of dirt? And he's just like, oh no, I had 9 months to work on it, did nothing. I've got nothing but a cardboard box. That's what this was. You had 2 months to say something genuine, and all we got was, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, we feel bad. They're not going to own up to it. And they're not going to willingly say, yes, take away our World Series title. And once again, at the end of the day, all this says to me is that it was worth it. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And they did cheat. They actually cheated, and they won a World Series, and it's not going to get taken away from them, and none of the players are going to get punished for it. So at the end of the day, what do we tell our kids? It was worth it. Great message, Major League Baseball. Great message, Houston Astros. I think I just lost more respect for the Houston Astros than I did the entirety of FIFA. That's how bad we're getting. They're making boxing look legit. I'll finish the rant right here with the Houston Astros, but it's equal parts funny, it's equal parts tragic, and it's all parts infuriating. And whether you want to call it good for the game of baseball or bad, I mean, be a note on this. Every single away game for the Houston Astros is going to become must-watch TV. That goes without saying. You are going to have guys banging on trash cans until there's no tomorrow, or some form of it. You are going to have guys chirping the entire dugouts. There's even a statement made from the MLB on not wanting to hit players with baseballs. Pitchers and beanballs, I should clarify. That's going to stop them. That's going to deter them. Just like that's going to deter the Astros from cheating ever again, based on their punishment. I have not seen one piece of news in the last 3 weeks that has made this situation any better. Not this new wacky playoff format for the MLB. Not all the interviews and discussions that have been had by the Astros players. Not all the individual MLB players that have been lashing out. Not Justin Verlander, who is usually, one of the most outspoken guys on Twitter and whatnot, save for Trevor Bauer. And now he's just dead quiet. Not a peep out of him. And he knew it too. I don't know if any of you guys caught that interview bit, but he did say, I should have done more to stop it in an interview during that media day. So whether or not you want to hold everybody accountable, Whether or not you thought he was an upstanding guy, guess what? He knew about it. Which leads me to believe that Jim Crane knew about it, which leads me to believe that practically everybody in the organization knew about it. If your pitcher, who rarely takes a swing at a ball anyways, knew about it. And again, as far as the World Series title being vacated, whether trophies and awards for individual efforts get redacted or removed or handed out to other players, which has also become a topic of discussion recently, I can't say any of that's going to happen, which is just upsetting and saddening to me, but that's the status of the MLB right now. Everything's on fire in the MLB. That's your MLB update as we head into spring training. So I think that's going to end it on this very positive episode of the Blues Rants podcast. Thank you all very much for listening. Once again, my name has been Philip Miller. You have been listening to the Blues Rants podcast. Tune in on Thursday when we play against the Arizona Coyotes, and again on Friday when we play the Dallas Stars. Hopefully, I'm on a higher note, better tune to sing to once the Blues enter those games. But that's going to be it for now. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, you can like us on our Facebook page. We got everything for you there and more. Thanks for listening.